Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon to those of you in the Near East, and good evening to folks who are watching this from the Far East. Welcome to the second session of the second day of this 3-day BeConnected virtual data conference. I'm Meena. I'm a data engineer here at Chainsys, and I will be your host for this session. Let's actually get this webinar going and turn to our next guest speaker. I am pleased and thrilled to welcome Jay Balan to speak with us here today on this platform. He joined Chainsys just earlier this month and will be operating in the roles of Chief Information Officer and VP of Delivery. So I would actually like to take this opportunity to also extend to him a very warm welcome to the company on behalf of all of my colleagues here. So far in his career journey spanning the past 3 decades, he has amassed the technical, business, and relationship acumen to successfully deliver large-scale transformation projects for Fortune 500 companies across industry verticals like mining, manufacturing, the private sector, and pharma. He is highly skilled and has taken on challenges in strategic planning, pre-sales, hands-on global delivery execution, and C-suite advisory at top-tier firms, including HP, CompuWare, and IXS Coatings. He holds a proven track record of utilizing out-of-the-box approaches to establish business value. Moreover, he has held coveted positions in the Chief Technology and Information Executive Offices and has forged his own brand as a thought leader by optimizing clients' business processes to boost efficiency and productivity. Today, he's here with us to deliver a talk on data modernization specific to the manufacturing vertical. In line with this, he will also walk us through use cases in the context of an automotive company. Before I hand this over to Jay, though, to get his session started, I'd like to let the audience know that I will initiate a short Q&A, that's question and answer portion, for Jay to answer questions from all of you from the audience. For me to do that, everyone, please do send in any and all questions you would like to ask him as his session progresses. You can do this by using the Q&A box down below in the Zoom meeting toolbar at the bottom of your screen. You can type your questions in and send them right away across to me. I will curate these questions and hand them over one by one to Jay when he reaches the end of his presentation. At any point, if any of you encounter any technical issues during this webinar, please return to the virtual lobby where we have tech assistance from vFairs. vFairs is the conference hosting platform, and they will be there to help you out. At this point, I'll let you take over and start now with your presentation, Jay. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Meena, for those very kind words. And good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, based on wherever you are. Hopefully, you folks are having a wonderful day. So when this opportunity came up and I was asked to pick a topic, it put me in a quandary as to what I should talk about, because I wanted to make it relevant to the audience, right? There's a multitude of topics we could talk about, but my intent is to kind of relate how Chainsys has helped me and my previous engagements, companies where I've worked with, and what have they done, right? So my intent today is to kind of walk you through what my pain points were, where they were, how the engagements were with Chainsys, what did they do, right? How did they really solve the problem? And in reality, I think that's the way the roadmap was paved for a very successful relationship personally for me and Chainsys. So I have the unique opportunity of being on the other side of the table, right? I was a client to Chainsys till recently. I've held CIO positions for a long time, but the last one was for, I'll go down to the next slide where So before I go down, this is at a very high level what I plan to talk about. It's centric to manufacturing. So I'll talk about a few use cases within the manufacturing space where Changes has helped me, specific projects. In fact, I've picked two projects which really helped me um, project the value add that Changes has brought to my company. And then there is something that I want to talk about centric to AI. So I'll hold that thought for now because it's it's a very fun topic to talk about, but I'll hold that for now. And then, as Meena said, I would be happy to take any questions at the end. So at a very high level, that's what I plan to do. So I'll start off with a little bit of introduction to the previous engagements where Change has helped me, right? So I used to be the CIO for IXS Coatings, a huge tier one manufacturing company. And most of this you will get it from if you do a Google search. But let me kind of summarize for you what we did for a living, right? It was, as I said, a major tier one automotive supplier. We used to supply to the big three, Stellantis, the GMs, the Fords, the Toyotas, the Hondas, you name it, we had them as a major client. We had extensive operations in North America, which included Canada, obviously North America and Mexico, and in Asia Pac. At a very high level, we had 3 lines of business, and I served as the CIO for all 3 lines of the business. And a very easy way to kind of explain this, there was a business-to-business entity where we dealt with the OEMs, where IXS would deal with the GMs and the Fords and the Chryslers and the Toyotas. So that was one big bucket. The second was where we had direct relationships with the end customer. So we had a business to consumer kind of a portal, which we called as Linex. If you see the last bullet item, it talks about Linex and Ultimate Linex. So Linex was the business to consumer entity, and it provided services on a franchise perspective. So think about it as no different from, say, a McDonald's or a Subway or a Dunkin' Donuts, except that we were very centric to automotive services that we provided, right? It could be anything from, we had customers bring in their F-150s or Silverados, and our cash cow was really the bed liner spraying that we provided our customers. It was virtually a business where we had no competition. So it's amazing how successful we've been, right? So the company really grew very fast. And anytime you grow very fast, while on the top end, from a revenue perspective, it is great, but it comes with other challenges as to, how do we manage the business so that it is scalable, it is extensible, and we actually make money, right? So effectively, that's what this slide is about, a background on a major tier one supplier. So I'm going to talk about 2 use cases. And I usually, when I talk, I don't look at the slides because the best way to talk is to talk through your heart. But in this case, it kind of relates to what I said, right? So when you have enterprises that are extremely fast growing, right? You have very fundamental problems, right? And IXS had north of 35 manufacturing facilities, right? So just put that in perspective, right? So you have a multitude of OE vendors giving you data in multiple forms. You have 35 manufacturing facilities serving not only these clients, but all kinds of other entities. And here we are trying to, on one hand, trying to make sure that the demand that's coming in can be addressed. And on the other hand, making sure that not only do we address these demands, but we are growing in a fashion that can be managed. So one of the biggest problems we had, and most of you who've been in a manufacturing environment before can relate to this, right? So if you see here, there were three major problems. They were actually quite a few, but I kind of put it down to three big buckets. The first one was labor efficiency, right? So here we are growing up the ramp, you doing all kinds of stuff for a multitude of customers. But how do we make sure we actually have efficiency within our labor force? What does that mean really, right? What are the KPIs that you should be managing to? Do you as the customer, as me as the customer, know what I should be looking for, right? If I didn't know that, who can help me be the trusted advisor that says, here are the 10 big KPIs you need to look at, Jay, and here's the mean that you're looking for, or any of the data points extraneous to that mean you need to focus on, right? And I'll talk in a little bit of detail about this. Then comes the operational efficiency, right? How effective is your manufacturing facility, right? For example, if your line rate is going to be, I'll just pick a number, 50 trucks per line per shift, right? For an overall hit rate of about 500 trucks per day. What is it that you're achieving? What is it that you could achieve? And what is reality, right? So you have to have those forecast to budget to actuals, right? And then you have to have those data points which kind of say, you know what, I targeted for 100 vehicles today, I met 50, right? And then you kind of do the regression analysis to say what led to that, you not meeting those targets. The other big part, and this is true across any facility in North America and Canada and Mexico, is health and safety, right? This is a big problem, right? How do we ensure that our labor force is well trained in health and safety? What does it mean? How do you deal with issues when somebody is hurt at work? What can you do proactively, right? There's tons of things that you can do proactively. And once an event happens, what is step 1, step 2, and step 3 to address those concerns so that you are in compliance with the law? And if you look at this, when I first had a view into this, I was like, this should be easy to really address. And the more I kind of went deeper into the issue, that's when you realize these are such fundamental and far-reaching issues that you really need a system that can help you solve these issues. And then the last one, which all of us have been through since 2020, and some of us are still going through these issues, is COVID. COVID really put a dent in how we work, how we do work, what our ability to throughput is. But then comes the encapsulation layer, as I call it, that helps us define what is it that we as an enterprise have to do for compliance, right? We had very strict compliance both from the state governments and the federal governments. Are we doing what we are supposed to do? How do we know what we are doing? Or if we don't have insight to it, how is it possible systematically to help us understand that we have these tasks to do, right? So long story short, as I said, there was at least 5 or 6 other things that really hurt us as we were growing. But I was very happy when Changes came in as a trusted advisor and kind of put a system, a process, the technology, the tools in place to kind of help me understand, how do we do this, right? And I was pleasantly surprised because in my other positions as the CIO, I used to call it the single throat to choke, right? And for most of you who have run large enterprise solutions, it's always a multi-vendor environment, right? So the typical paradigm that I've seen is it is somebody else's problem. So there is tons of finger pointing. And at the end of it, you are trying to resolve who owns the problem. And what really attracted me to Changes was, here was a platform where I don't have to worry about a single throat to choke because they could do it all, right? So long story short, right? Typically we see silos for everything, be it for data migration, for data cleansing, for performance testing, or for any kind of analytical tools. It's all siloed, right? And then you have to have some kind of magical APIs that brings all of this together, right? And then you have to have the leadership and the governance and the process on top of it that makes this feasible. And guess what, guys? That is very easily said, very hard to implement, right? But in this case, when I saw the change this platform, I was like, wow, right? Here is one platform that helped me solve all of these issues. So that's the net of what I want to talk about. So in this slide, really, it gives you a feel for what my pain points were, right? I had data coming in, structured, semi-structured, unstructured, you name it, all formats, all versions, you name it, Excel, PDFs, links, video, photos, everything, right? From multitude of customers, right? And we didn't have an EDI solution in place that made this seamless either. So I had data coming in, I had no data lake, I had no insight as to how to organize this data, right? So if you look at it, this kind of summarizes where I have my screen as to what my pain points were, right? As I said, I like to talk through it, but I have put that in a bullet form so that you guys can kind of relate to what I'm saying. And the challenge is what I talked about, right? I didn't know what I don't know. And that goes for my leadership, right? So if I have to go to my CEO and say, you know what, our plant in Cleveland or our plant in Mexico for the last 3 weeks has been running at, pick a number, 45% of capacity. And here are the top 3 reasons. Short of doing it manually, guys, I had no way of coming to that consensus and putting that dashboard view in place, right? So when I have to do it manually, guess what? It takes up time I don't have. It gives us opportunities for errors, which at a C level, there is zero opportunity for excuses, right? So it really was not a very fun situation to be in. So the challenges are plenty, but let's look at what changes did for me, right? So just like everything else, when changes came and said, we have a platform and this is what we can do, my first thing was, well, guys, let's do an assessment, right? I need you to understand what you're walking into, right? True, you have a platform that might be able to solve maybe 80% of the issues, but let's get through an assessment first, right? Get to know all your data sources, get to know the quality of the data, right? If the quality of data is bad, it's absolutely useless, right? So your assessment really gives you a feel for what you're walking into, right? And that will give you an idea of the amount of work, right? So if you really look here, before we go into any kind of design, what they help me with is kind of putting my arms around all the major sources, right? And I've laid out a few things here. We had smart sheets, multiple softwares with overlapping functionalities that did the same thing, but provided data that was not true, right? So, for example, smart sheets would say my line rate was 72. The Excel sheets where we had input from the OEs would say, no, it was 48. So who do you believe, right? That's what I meant by validating the data, right? So if you looked at it, I'll let you read through this real quick, but effectively, once you have an assessment, once you have done your data quality checks, what kind of data fields are missing, then you can put your solution in place. So the benefits of when we use the system, if you looked at it, it was a single system to monitor all the plant operations. So remember I said we had north of 35 manufacturing facilities. So each plant did what they wanted. Each plant reported their own KPIs. Each plant had their own unique way to report on labor efficiency, on operational efficiency. And many a time, we couldn't really question them or go up against them to validate the data which they were providing because they had their own little statistical analysis to prove that they were at a certain number. But with changes coming in and providing the solution, I had one dashboard where I could click in and say, okay, plant number 25, what was your throughput? What was your labor efficiencies? Give me the top 3 reasons that we didn't meet our targets for the week, right? So at the end of the day, I had labor efficiencies, I had shift efficiencies, I had plant efficiencies, I had efficiencies by line, right? So I could figure out, okay, for Stellantis Ram, I'm hitting 95%, but GM Silverado, for whatever reason, for the past 3 weeks, I'm at 75. So those data points was immensely helpful for me. So that helped me kind of drive down and see what the underlying pain points were, and immensely useful, right? I also talked about health and safety, right? We put a process in place on where each employee was provided heads up on all the kind of trainings he or she is supposed to take, right? And just like everything else, you can preach to the choir, but chances are you'll have to remind employees, you'll have to kind of nudge them a little bit to ensure that they actually are taking their training. And even with those kind of processes in place, chances are we need to have compliance rules in place, which means using this platform again, changes providers reports directly email to the manager saying, you have 3 employees that haven't taken the training, right? So go figure out what's going on. Are they on sick leave? Are they on vacation? But you need to kind of make sure they get it done because senior leadership is going to be provided with this data, right? So health and safety, we provided all the data. Changes provided all the data that we can. And I said from a shift efficiency perspective, it was not only shift, right? So we know by line, by shift, by the type of vehicle, what our efficiencies was. And similar to that, when, the same kind of dashboard reports for COVID compliance, right? I know it's fast forward 2 years, maybe we are thinking COVID is in the rearview mirror, but I'm sure nobody has forgotten all the pain points. So you have all those processes well defined, basically wearing masks, we had smart sensors set up where we could kind of have cameras kind of define which employees were repeat offenders for not wearing masks, right? Maybe not taking the booster shots and such like that. So all those kind of compliances that were required, both by the state government and the federal government, I think we were able to get that, right? So it's amazing systematically what we were able to achieve. So again, so this project was a super success, very well received. And again, this slide was, I fell in love with this slide when Sundhu actually talked to me about this. And I call it the one throat to choke slide, right? And I'm sure most folks here on this call have either been an integral part of putting this together or an integral part of building the platform, sustaining it, and extending it to different customers based on the use case. So for me, this was very useful because I actually used DataSap, I used DataSense. I was a big proponent of the smart bots. I love it to death. And of course, the smart app builder, it goes back to, I guess, most of us, we started off as developers and architects. Anytime you had rapid application deployment, if you can automate that and do it faster, bring it on, right? So this slide is kind of very close to me. I love this slide. So, there were instances where I talked to the Changes team and kind of alluded to my satisfaction on how trusted they were, given what they can do. Now I'm going to talk about one more use case besides what I already talked about. So we had a MES system, right? Basically, an MES system is a plant floor system that talks to your ERPs, right? anything from a manufacturing perspective, be it for bed liner spraying or any manufacturing function. This is kind of a pseudo ERP that actually links to an ERP. And we had multitude ERPs. Actually, the Epicor was the ERP of choice. And when I said we grew very fast, we had multiple versions of ERP running, multiple versions of Epicor. And guess what, guys? It wasn't cloud-based. It was on-prem. So you could kind of figure out the mess we were in, right? On-prem ERP solutions, multiple versions, an MES solution that was built in-house 25 years ago, right? And if I tell you that that was deployed to each plant as a single instance, so I had 25 instances of my MES solution working with local backups, local customizations, each to suit the plant or the OEM that they were servicing. And you could just think about the mess we are in, right? So here we are, an outdated solution kept alive with Band-Aids, an ERP system that is on-prem, again, very old, not configured properly, probably using 40% of the functionality. So this is a classic recipe for disaster, right? So what that leads to is that you cannot scale, right? So if one of the OEs came and said, guys, you were doing 100 lines per shift per day, we see a demand forecast coming in for 200, chances are we would have to say, thank you for the confidence, but we can't take the extra demand, right? So that's not a fun situation to be in, guys, right? When you are actually turning down top line growth, that's not something senior leadership likes, right? So that's at a very high level. The next, this was in a way, I put this together. This was for the health and safety, labor efficiency, operational efficiency, kind of a pictorial view of what Changes did for me. And this is why I said Data Zap is there, Data Sense is there, the smart app builder is there. So this gives you a view of how they solution the product for me. And this is, and I love this. This was basically a dashboard that all the plant managers got, and all you had to do was click. If it was red, you could click and you could figure out. So nothing very, there's not rocket science, but we never had this. So thank you, Changes, again for that. So this is where I was talking about the MES and the ERP integration issues, right? So at a very high level, I hope I'm doing okay on time, Meena. I like to talk about issues quite a bit, but at a very high level.
You're good, Jay.
Okay, thank you again. You talk about, Epicor on the left-hand side here. You talk about the endpoints. You talk about, the amount of databases. I talked about each database, SQL sometimes. I had really no insight if these were backed up daily, weekly, incrementally. So think about the situation we were in, right? So here we are in the middle layer where the proposal comes in to kind of sanitize this environment and get us to at least a platform where we can breathe, right? So that is what Changes did for us, fully leveraging, 100% leveraging a platform that everyone on this call hopefully has seen, or if not, please reach out to me. I will personally, or with the help of the fellow architects, make sure that you have insight and all the information that you need as to how this works. And I'm living testimony as to how a truly enterprise manufacturing mess was solved using the platform, right? So again, the nice thing about pictorial views is it kind of gives you how the approach is what I would be explaining to you in about 10 minutes, right? What were the tools that were used? And this goes back to the one throat to choke slide that I talked about, right? So this was for WindTracker. Now I do have a few slides specific to what WindTracker did. I am not going to focus on those slides too much, but my whole intent is to give you an idea of how big the problem is, right? A vehicle comes in, we got to validate the vehicle. It's a manual process, right? We used to write, there was a manual tracker. How do we automate this, right? Then the vehicle gets processed. If it meets the QC environment, what happens? Then there is a gate out process. And once the gate out process is done, there's that wonderful thing which says, I want to get billed. I want to get paid for what I did, right? So this entire gamut of workflow management is what this next few slides talks about. So I'm going to zip through them. And the whole intent is that it gives you a view into which part of the platform was effectively used, right? So here we go. So the next few slides is basically all about our existing MES solution that we have. So it's the registration, the job assignments, gate in, service order, vehicle received, right? So this is the forecasting, and this is when, for example, GM comes and says a job code to a sales code combination. I'm going to give you 100 Silverados, of which 50 need this kind of job done, 30 need this work done, 20 needs this work done. So they kind of give you that. And guess what? As I said, there was no unified EDI solution. Some of it could be via email. Some of it could be via Excel sheets. So a unified EDI solution would be very helpful, which we put in place. But again, this is the intake process, right? What in the world do we need to do, right? And then the gate in process. A truck has come in. It needs to have a bedliner spray. How do we mask it? What kind of work do we need to do? Are there any kinds of special checks we have to do on it? Does it also need a moon roof or a sunroof or a step stool or anything that we need? So if you can see, there is all kinds of references to the platform here, right? So, and again, you can read this at leisure, but the whole intent is, what did we do to solve the problem? So DataSap is used here. The vehicle receiving in, once a vehicle is done, it's based on the bay, based on what needs to be done. Does it go into bay 1, bay 2, bay 3? Is it just going to be, a robot can take care of it based on the job code that came from the OEM? Then the vehicle processing, right? How do we actually do the work that's supposed to be done on the, and then remember, training is a big part of it, right? Let's say you have somebody on the assembly floor who is not trained to use a torque gun, for example, right? The last thing we want is once he logs on, there'll be all kinds of ACLs that will come up which says, okay, employee number 123 has done all these trainings, which kind of gives him the authorization to do this function, right? So that kind of ACL control, making sure that things are lined up, because anytime somebody does something that he or she is not trained for, guess what, guys? It goes into the quarantine bay, and that's the next thing, which means it is vehicles that cannot be shipped to the end customer. It's vehicles that we have to rework. It's money that we are not collecting, right? So this is where it is the QC, so the quarantine bay. So my intent, anytime I go to a manufacturing facility was to look at KPIs, where it gives me insight into how many vehicles were in the quarantine bay. So one of the things we were able to do is to give not only the management, but the end worker data points on, you are supposed to do 50 vehicles based on what you're doing. You have exceeded your limit. You are at 55, or the reverse could be true. You are at 45. So providing that level of insight, guess what that does to the employee or the person on the shop floor? It actually energizes them to kind of say, okay, I need to get my act together. I need to actually do what I'm supposed to do. And this is all because of the exposure that we were able to provide those employees. And the same applies to leadership and the supervisors, right? So if you want to kind of look at what your run rates are, where are you? If you're behind, what's your profitability? All those data points can be very easily managed, right? So we were able to kind of get ourselves to that kind of a paradigm, which again provides every employee the opportunity to say, I can do better, right? I can do better, I will do better, and I'll meet my targets. So if you can get to that kind of a model where you're energizing every employee and kind of saying, you can do better, I think we have won, right? So I feel very confident, very happy that we can do that in a single tool, right? So again, as I said, this is the gate out facility. More importantly, is this last one where there is interfaces to my ERP solution, Epicor, which then sends out the ASNs, which is basically telling the OEMs, here is a truck that's coming back. I send you 50 trucks, and oh, by the way, please pay me for that, right? Because that's what keeps all the plants humming. So I am, and again, I like to have pictorial views. So hopefully this kind of gives you I call it the architect view of how things are laid out, who talks to what are the protocols. Usually when we go into design sessions, we have deep design documents which says what the ports are, but this at a very high level pictorial view provides all the insight that you want. So I'll pause for a second because I'm going to kind of change gears and talk for a few minutes about something that's very close to everybody's heart, including the platform. And I know Change the CEO, Sindhu is very passionate about this, but I have about 2 or 3 slides, guys. The reason I thought I might as well talk about this is twofold. I do talk at numerous conferences, and what I see is a general sense of confusion on what AI is, right? It's a term that's loosely used. It's a term that's very freely used. And it's a term that's very wrongly used at times, right? So my intent here is really to kind of talk about a few things that I think we all should be in sync. But at the end of the day, as business leaders, right, if we can talk and be aware of use cases that we specifically can help ourselves, be it increase efficiency, be it automation, be it better insight. I mean, there's multitude of efficiencies and advantages to embracing this new concept, right? That we can think about specific use cases where changes can help you, right? And of course, you probably know that we are truly, truly embracing AI, right? So if you look at, and again, AI is a term, as I say, very loosely used, but the amount of maturity, say, in the fintech space versus the manufacturing space, for example, take Tesla, right? The amount of AI maturity that Mr. Musk has been able to bring within Tesla, I think it's a factor of 10, right? Even if you take GM versus Tesla or outside of the automotive space, I think they have leapfrogged everybody, right? But again, what I intend to do is just kind of give you insights into what AI is. How does that relate to your specific cases? I mean, I have people from the fintech space, I have automotive people, I have risk management people, I have people all verticals here. So as business leaders, I think it behooves us to kind of say, okay, there is this new and trendy thing called AI, which I got to embrace because everybody and his uncle is doing that. And it's going to make me look like a rock star. What is it that I can do? What is it that changes can do? So before I kind of talk about this, I just want to say, if you have questions, please reach out, agnostic to whoever it is. You can reach out to Sindhu, our CEO. You can reach out to me or any of the leaders, and we will make sure that we get you the traction you need, right? So, but at a very high level, guys, right? I put some few slides together. And I was telling our host Meena that I usually just do the talking, and I have people that put the slides together. But here I was yesterday evening putting all these slides together, and it was fun. It was fun, right? So at a very high level, guys, you can put this into 2, 3, 4 buckets at this time, right? Predictive AI, generative AI, right? I think people have heard about it, but if not, I think that is what the landscape is today, right? And I'll talk about the third one, which I personally have been, I've helped a few companies in the space. So predictive AI is, maybe I should just go down to a few use cases that will help you relate to this, right? In the fintech space, right? If you go to, say, Fidelity or Vanguard, or T. Rowe Price, or just as an example, right? They will run models for you if you can provide the right input. What do I mean by that? If you are a 35-year-old, you're making, say, $100,000, your 401k is 200K, you want to retire at 55, there's a whole bunch of data points, right? So they take all these data points. The algorithm is able to kind of say, predict, okay, and what's your spending pattern, what's your savings, paradigm. Based on that, they can kind of spit out, are you ready for retirement at 55? Or if not, what is the gap? Where do you need to do? So this is a classic fintech predictive analysis use case. You take the MasterCards and the Visas of the world, right? Based on your spending pattern, right? They are able to say, the algorithm is able to say, you know what, this charge kind of looks dubious. Maybe we need to reach out to the customer and kind of get concurrence that this was indeed he charging. And actually it works, because so many times, and I know everybody has got these texts from your respective credit card companies. Look at the feeling of security and the feeling of the feel-good factor that you get, right? That somebody is actually looking out for you. It's amazing, right? And guess what, guys? All of this can be done systematically, right? And of course, the more we do, there's a term that we use within AI called heuristics. And heuristics is nothing but the ability to learn from your mistakes, ability to learn from what you did right. So as the engine becomes more smart, it's able to learn from the data it has amassed. And the more data you feed it, the more clarity it can bring to the decision-making abilities, right? So this is an ongoing journey, as I call it, but immensely useful. It touches each of us on an everyday basis, right? And we can relate to all of this, right? So predictive analysis, I think most of us have used. The use cases are across all domains. But let's talk about generative AI, right? This is more use cases would be airline pricing, right? They can real estate, manufacturing. In fact, I put a couple use cases together, and I want to talk about a couple, especially some of it might not be all that conducive to a good business sense. For example, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, Scarlett Johansson, all of you have heard, she's a very popular actress, blah, blah, blah. She sued an agency saying that, she had a photograph that this agency took, and she was holding something else, and they put a beer can, and then they changed her clothes to kind of say it's whoever it is, from Nike, Adidas, or whoever. And the problem was, it was so easy to do. So here we are now in a paradigm where deep fakes are an everyday event. People can be manipulated. Voices can be manipulated. Images, I think everyone on this call has seen images of celebrities doing things that they have never said or claimed to have done. So how do we manage this, right? So while on one hand, we are talking of efficiencies that AI can bring, it's a typical paradigm of you have grown really quickly, guys. Where is the governance of this? How do we handle this? How do we make sure that we grow in a fashion that it makes sense to the community overall, right? But look at what it has done for the legal and the medical field, right? I mean, if you're looking at, you want to look for precedents on a case, I mean, the paralegal, I would say 2 years back would go through all the data. She would do a Google search, try to figure out what happened 20 years back. But right now, it can get through, a generative model can get through terabytes of data in literally no time, right? And that's immensely useful, immensely powerful. And the same for the medical field, right? If you want to figure out patterns of, and I was doing a speech for a very large hospital chain about 2 months back, and they have embraced AI, and they were saying they are now able to predict with decent accuracy what the cancer rates could be for certain type of people, right? Based on age, your food habits, your weight, and all those kinds of data inputs. So immensely useful. And the last one, which I think is most of us would be interested about, is the stock market projections, right? And for those of you who get on conference calls or hear them, if you just look at the Microsoft or the Apples or the Metas or the Amazons, it's become a running joke. The references to AI from each of these calls, right? NVIDIA or AMD. Uh, I would guess it's no less than maybe 30 to 40 times where AI is referenced, right? And that was not the case, say, 2 quarters ago, 3 quarters ago. So what it means is every big technology company, every big retail, you name it, agnostic to the vertical, everybody has said, guys, AI is here to stay. You don't have a choice, right? If you do not embrace it, you're going to be left behind, right? AI is not now able to predict with decent accuracy what the pop would be. If you came up with a top line miss or a bottom line beat or your EPS miss, it can at least help you, right? So all the advisors are scared, right? Because now these were models that they were running manually. Now, and a model can pretty decently predict all this, right? So it's fun, guys. So we really don't know the use cases that could be addressed. It's virtually endless, right? And that's why my last slide really, I say, it's the wild, wild west. And what I mean is in a very good way, right? So as companies like Changes, we have totally embraced AI. We want to bring that capability to our customers so that you can be successful, right? It's truly amazing, right? And where do we go from here, right? Your guess is as good as mine, right? Now we are talking about. I was actually at University of Michigan over the weekend talking to the computer science department, and they were working on, and they had drawn. They just drew a flow chart on the board, and the algorithm was able to kind of they fed that picture to it. It was able to predict what it did. So it put a lot of, not only did it analyze what it was, it put a level of intelligence on it to say, you know what, this is regarding this industry, and here's where it's wrong, and this is how you fix it, and here's the pseudocode for that. And if you want it in the code to fix, here's the code, right? So think about how powerful this is, all based on a single photograph, right? So that's what I mean, that in the next, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4 years, AI is here to stay, guys. We are going to be embracing it. The platform is going to be heavily, heavily dependent and smart about it. And I couldn't be more happy about it, right? Because we are making a fundamental difference in how we can add value to our customers. So that's a very satisfying feeling, at least personally, for myself. So I'm going to pause here. Hopefully this was informative, both from a manufacturing space, from a platform perspective. I know there's been a lot of sessions on AI, but here I am to reiterate from the entire leadership that AI is here to stay with the platform, and we are here to grow, guys. So thank you very much for listening. Meena, I'm going to turn it over to you if there are any questions. I'll be more than happy to answer, but I guess I wasn't sure I would use the entire 60 minutes, but here I am. I've got about 6
You
minutes.
were great, Jay, and AI is certainly here to stay. Thank you so much. I think this was a fantastic talk. I was so engrossed that I lost track of time a little bit there, but we're right on time. We're good. Everything's good. Um, I just feel that one of the things you said right at the beginning of your presentation was that you don't prefer to talk from the slides, but instead to talk from your heart. I thought that was really key. That was really critical here, and I'm sure all of us. I speak on behalf of the entire audience when I say that it's something that we can learn from as well. But I think overall your talk was just very fluid, easy to follow along, and it was just engrossing in just the way that you delivered it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for
My
that.
pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks as well for the effort you put in, the commitment for the slides that you had to prepare. Thank you for that. Let me just get the Q&A portion started.
Sure,
We
sure.
do have a few questions from the audience. The very first question that I have for you here is a member of the audience asked, what is the role, and I think you might have covered this during your presentation, but maybe briefly, if you could, for this person, what is the role of data analytics in the automotive industry, and how exactly is Changes helping on this?
Yeah, that's a very important question, right? And again, I can just go back to the use case I had, especially for the MES solution that we were working on, right? So at a very high level, guys, the platform is kind of plugged right to do what the entire gamut of data. I'm just going to say it that way, right? So when I say data, what we kind of do as trusted advisors was, help the business unit users kind of take a step back and say, what do I have? And obviously, 80% of the companies have a mess in their hands, right? Because they have really not taken the effort to understand the data. So once you understand, oh, okay, these are the 55 sources, this is the mechanism to get it in, then you kind of say, okay, I got the data, I know where it's coming from. But what is the quality of the data, right? Okay, if I have to put that into, again, I don't want to go into technical details, but if I have to put it into a data lake, say like Snowflake or Databricks, agnostic to the platform that you use, who within the business is going to help me, right? So that's a fundamental question the business has now got to go back and say, who can help me define what this attribute means? Why is it blank for 80% of the data, right? How do I get that cleaned up, right? Then comes the process of, okay, I cleaned it. The tool, the platform can help you do that, right? Then I need to keep it clean, right? Because if you don't keep it, you don't have a process, you don't have the leadership. If you don't have the data scientists, the data analysts in place, the data architects that kind of keep all of this together, guess what? You're going to be right back to where you were 3 months ago, right? The data quality is right back to a scale of 1 on 10. Then comes the quality of the data. How do you keep it clean? The classification of the data, the process and the ACLs in place to ensure that only people that are supposed to touch the data, edit the data, clean the data can do what they are. So it's effectively, you have to look through, it's like a life cycle of data management that the platform provides that enterprises have to embrace, right? Unless they do that, and each time you don't do that, you have a weak link, which means there is a high probability you're going to fail someplace, somewhere, somehow, right? So think about it holistically. Have a trusted partner like Changes help you out. We have done this multiple times. We are a global company. We understand not only the technology side, we understand verticals. So we'll be happy to help you. So hopefully that answers whoever asked that question.
Yes, I think that should have helped answer the question for the member of the audience who asked that. We are right on time. We have 3 minutes to go. So I think this is the perfect moment to wind down. Um, I think we really did achieve what we set out to do in this session. You know, there was a lot of clarity that you gave us on what AI really is towards the end with generative AI as well. You touched on that. And I think what was really beautiful was how you also provided a very well delivered talk on how the Changes platform is equipped to improve operational efficiency, and to see the bottom line, right? To see the impact
Exactly.
on the bottom line. Yeah. I think right now to thank you, Jay. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you,
being
guys.
here, taking time out of your schedule to talk to us today. And to the audience as well, I would like to thank all of you for being here with us. We are going to wind down the session now, and I'm going to give you all a break before the next webinar starts at 11 Central, 12 Eastern. We will have Ratna Vupala appearing as the guest speaker next to talk about streamlining customer data management. And he's going to be talking about how his company, Overhead Door Corporation, enhances efficiency with the data Zen software from Changes. With that,
Wonderful.
guys, it's a wrap. Thank you, Jay. Thank you, everyone. Bye bye.
Thank you so much, guys. Have a great day. Thank you.